Hi, welcome back to the Healing News Show. We're at episode 19 and we're with Gloria Lybecker, our host, and I'm Vanessa Harris, the co-host. And today we're going to look at patterns of the past.
Yeah. Oh, so the patterns of the past. I'm guessing it might be helpful for our viewers to really even understand the context of what that phrase means, the patterns of the past.
Because it would mean different things to different people, I'm guessing.
It could.
So let's be clear what we're talking about.
Yes, in this context. So in this context, what we're talking about is when we're going through our day, and then all of a sudden it seems as if something's dangerous. You can't really even see it's dangerous. I have an example I could use when I was at a training for professionals, learning how to stay present with uncomfortable emotions and how to be a resource to somebody that may have all of a sudden shown anxiety or upset and it was a man that I was working with, and what he did was, in the context of, we had an inner circle and an outer circle, and I'm on the outer circle moving around, and on the inner circle they're supposed to play this part of getting anxious or riled or angry or just some stronger emotion, but they're not talking about it. And so we're going to do our best to engage with them. Well, when this person leaned forward on their elbow, jutted their jaw, and squinted their eyes like that, I was just like triggered. And in that moment, what it was is previous experiences I'd had of trauma. When somebody presented that way, my body knew that I'd better get really still or I was going to get bit by a viper.
Right.
And so how do you continue to have conversation? And so in that moment, how I showed up was what I would call my, what do I call it? I call my apparently normal personality stepped to the foreground to try and help me save face, but she wasn't very articulate. She wanted to share just as little as she could. The guy got worried about me. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. And yet I'd really gone deep inside to a deep trauma. And so that's a more an extreme example of what can happen. But when we've had an experience in our life where our body learned, that's where all of our implicit memories live and reside. And so our body, our nervous system is always watching our environment to know, am I safe and do I matter? And that's in our limbic system, and it's scanning our environment all the time, and it's sending information as to what our action we're going to take, and etc. And so when my body saw those actions and took in the facial expression, especially in the body's posture, it's like danger. And it was a red alert danger. And so when that happens, it feels like it's now. Because I've had enough training and enough healing, I recognized I'd had a state shift.
And what do you call that? A state shift.
A state shift. So I'd gone from being socially engaged to dorsal vagal, a semi-freeze, where there's not much mobility even available, let alone vocal cords to talk. And so I was able to resource myself with a trusted friend who's an excellent practitioner, and she was able to support me to come back and to unpack that and to identify what it was and to receive some healing around that. And
so you just mentioned then dorsal vagal.
Yeah.
So can you just explain that a little bit? So you said you went from being socially engaged, which I understand. So your social engagement system and circuitry would have been engaged, and to dorsal vagal. So what exactly does that mean?
Well, we have the vagus nerve that goes throughout our whole system, and it works closely with our whole system. But there's the social engagement system is when the vagus nerve reaches into your throat and into your face and your ears, your eyes, and everything's on board. So that's more like engaged with your prefrontal cortex. You have everything attached. Well, when we flip our lid, then we go into sympathetic activation. And so sympathetic activation is fight, flight, And then if our system perceives that we can't get out of it, we can't fight our way out, we can't run our way out, we then go into the lowest system, and it's the most um, evolutionary, it's the oldest system we have, and down in the brainstem. And then we immobilize, and our body cascades us with a neurochemical so we don't feel the pain.
Right.
So that's why people kind of call it freeze. But immobility is a more apt term to use that the latest research has shown. And so we're actually immobilized. And Peter Levine has shared in a lot of his different work, you know, like an image of a lion and having a deer. And so if it catches the deer or the fawn and it takes it back to its lair, and it seems like the fawn is dead, then it goes off to go get its young to come back to get to have their meal. When the body of the fawn senses that cat is out of its area, it jumps up and it totally shakes all over, and then it runs like hell.
Right.
And because it shakes, because it lets go of all those neurochemicals, and then it can just run in order to continue to release those chemicals and get free. So it's like a fake death.
Is that what you're, so I've heard people talk about fight, flight, freeze, and fawn.
Yeah, that's
Is that what the fawn,
yeah.
Is that what that's describing?
Yeah, because we can come back out. Once we sense its safety, we can come back out, but we need to have a way to shake those chemicals loose of our body. And as humans, we tend to just keep them stuck in there.
Yes, yes, yes. And if we do get up and run around or shake things off or take off, it's often perceived as something negative. And so that behavior is, yes, yes. So that behavior is often, I know with kids at school, when they have an incident and they go up and they run, or they'll go running around the playground or something, out of the classroom and off. And of course, that's not conducive to a learning environment, and they're told, no, don't do that. But no one ever actually describes to them or sees maybe what that behavior is, and that they're actually doing something to calm that nervous system and bring that social engagement system back on track.
Yeah, the body is very resourceful. When you watch people's bodies, you can tell when you know what to see, what their body's needing. So, but that might be a whole different conversation.
I'll put a note down for that one. So when you were talking before, as you were describing the dorsal vagal, so just to clarify for me, because I'm a words person, dorsal, I understand vagal and the vagus nerve. What's the dorsal? Just what's the meaning of that part of it? Is that meaning?
Well, it's really down at the base.
Oh, so the primitive brain, brain is engaged. Okay, like the dorsal fin. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense now. I remember that now. And my internet connection is unstable. My computer's telling me. I hope that doesn't continue. So you mentioned two things before, where we're constantly scanning our environment for, am I safe?
And do I matter?
Do I matter?
Which,
when you were mentioning that, I was thinking about, so there's this, for you, what got triggered up your pattern from the past was that visual picture of someone leaning forward. And
the facial expression.
Yes. And then when you said, am I safe? I went, oh, okay, now I understand. I have such a strong reaction to smell. I have a very strong sense of smell, but I also have actual physical chemical reactions, like reactions to chemicals. And and mustiness and mold and perfumes. Like I will just be that, what's that smell? What's that smell? And that does get perceived as me complaining, I'm just going to say.
Yeah, well, I want to just acknowledge that you have a high sensitivity, and that's a gift, and yet to be able to monitor your environment to make sure it is safe for your system, because you do have such a high sensitivity. And there are more people that have high sensitivities now than we used to have, that's for sure.
And there's a lot more chemical and things in the environment. But I'm guessing that the sense of smell is a very primitive smell, a sense that used to protect us. We needed to smell a predator, or we needed to smell if a food was off, or if a plant didn't smell right, or like it was, as you were saying, keeping us
Very
safe.
life-serving. Yeah, very life-serving. Yeah.
Then the other thing that you were saying was, am I safe? Do I matter? So the safety one I get, I really, really relate to. And then do I matter? Can we talk a little bit more about how that looks and how that shows up for people when that gets triggered?
Well, do we have a sense of belonging? Are we included? Those are part of the clusters of needs that are under mattering. It's you're valued. You contribute to your community, to your tribe, to your unit of your family. So we need to have a place where we fit in, where we belong, and we feel comfortable and we can relax. And that's really important. And so our system, the patterns of the past, are going to come up for us when we've had those experiences where we've been alarmed and alone. We haven't had the experience of mattering or being safe. And we didn't have anyone to process it with. And we may not even be aware that that's what's happened. And we might not realize that we have a pattern. So that would bring us to what might we start to do differently? Because what would be different of being run by the patterns of the past? Well, what might be possible for folks is to be fully present and actually in tune to their body, to their system, to notice when something actually gets a little out of balance, and to pause and slow down and be with it so that they would be in full choice. Because when the patterns of the past are running us, it's like a veil of the past just comes down over all of our senses. And we're no longer in choice because we're now stuck in a pattern that we think is happening now, but it's just running us from the past. And our whole environment can even sound different, feel different, we see it different. Everything changes based on that.
So how do we know? How do people recognize? Because it's easy for me to recognize it in other people when I see them getting triggered and I think, oh, this is not about the current situation. This is about your past being triggered. But I find it much harder to see. I used to find it much harder to see myself, but now automatically what I will do is if I notice something, I'll go, oh, what is this about? And where am I feeling this? What is the first time I felt this? What is this really about? Like, is it really about the person standing in front of me and what they just said? Because logically I go, yeah, that's a huge reaction I'm having right over here. I don't think that it cannot possibly be. But I know that there are a lot of people who are still operating, I guess, they're not aware. And they find it hard to distinguish.
Because if we're not aware of it, it's unconscious.
Right.
And so then it's being harbored in our body because all of our memory, all of our life experiences are embodied within us. And it's an implicit memory. When it's safe enough for that to arise in order to be integrated within us, that's when it can come up. And so in previous episodes, I've talked about when I feel an uncomfortable emotion, I realize it's a part of myself ready to integrate. It's an aspect of my life for healing. And so we first need to learn that that's true. And one way that we can start to notice these patterns is if something's happened 3 times, it's a pattern. If you start to notice, wow, I think I've experienced this before. And on a bigger scale, I recognized in relationships that I kept attracting the same kind of relationship. And the 3rd time I got this, I'm like, what the heck? I moved to get rid of that relationship. I moved to start over. And I was like, and then I'm like, so I'm still me. So what is this? What's happening? And start to learn how to develop my own awareness from wherever I am to begin to expand my own perceptions from the limiting beliefs that I was holding within me. So that's one of the practices that I provide with clients is, transforming core beliefs, of releasing unconscious contracts, and time travel empathy. Those are all beautiful ways to just slow time down, to be with the body, and then whatever emerges, just creating a space that that's all right. And that there's no pressure, it doesn't have to look any certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But when the neuroception of safety is felt by our body, then what needs to emerge will. And working with the horses can just exponentially support that in happening.
Because the horses reflect back, they don't put the thinking and the story, and they'll just, so even if you're not aware, they'll be aware for you. That was my experience, that awareness. And when you were talking about your experience of noticing a pattern and having things 3 times, what came up for me was when I hear people saying, why does this always happen to me?
Yeah.
You know,
well,
like,
what they do is they settle. They're like, well, that's just the way it is. Well, I'm not going to settle. I want to stay curious. So when we can stay curious about what's happening, it can open a new doorway where we can start to see something we never saw before.
yes. So that settling, I think that's probably a really important point, because there are people who are more willing to settle for lots of reasons. I'm not one of those people. So I won't settle, because I always have looked at things and thought, this has to get better, or there has to be another way, or how can we improve this, or how can I improve this, or how can I heal this, or so it's that not settling. And part of the what you're talking about, the feelings, the uncomfortable feelings that come up because something's ready to be integrated.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about the warning signs on a dashboard. They're kind of like I'm getting a little bit of noise going on out there. Just give me 1 second, sorry.
Oh.
Okay. So when you're talking about the uncomfortable feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and them rising up, ready to be integrated,
Mm-hmm.
whereas a lot of people want to just push those away.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about that dashboard. So they're kind of like little signals saying, hello, there's something here that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And we're not going to ignore the oil light in our car or the filter light. When the filter needs to be changed, we attend to it. Mm-hmm. So, but I've never thought about it in what you were saying in terms of it's rising up because it's ready.
It is ready. Yeah. It senses that we have developed enough of our sense of self to stay present with it, because those parts are shunted deep inside because they weren't welcomed. There was no support. There was no resonance, no accompaniment. And so when they come up, when we've matured or we actually have a supportive person that's there with us, then they know that now we get to become our whole. So it's like healing the fractures of our own soul so that we can become who we were created to be.
So if we're noticing these patterns arising, or in that state of feeling, oh, well, why me? Or why does this always happen? Or even noticing uncomfortable feelings coming up a lot, which could be alarming. Like I'm feeling really sad and I'm really teary all the time, or I'm really angry. I think anger is the one that gets a bad rap. I'm just thinking that that's an indication that, okay, these patterns are coming up. The patterns are showing up, you're aware, and it is a time for change and healing. It's not something to be afraid of and run away. It's something to welcome, I guess.
Well, to learn that through the experience that it's safe to do that. Because our body goes into the tension to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when we can be in a place where we can relax, that's where the healing can happen. And so we need to be able to slow it down enough to create that container. And then we can look underneath that mat of anger. What's underneath there? So there's layers of that. And there's no forcing it. It's just staying curious and warm and gentle and inviting, allowing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
to see what's going on.
Yeah, so each person's going to have their own rhythm. There's no cookie cutter healing recipe for anybody. But there's a way of a container of how to hold it, how to allow it, and how to recognize if it's important. And, there can be a lot of shame that can come up for people. And they're like, they don't want to say anything because they realize that they might have like been gone for a minute or something. And because it's the ever-present past that until it's actually recognized and integrated, it continues to show up. If we try to ignore it, it may get stronger because it may be ready to heal. So when we can begin to find a place where we can allow it to come up and then receive what is the wisdom in there for us, then we're going to have something, a new way that we can perceive our life.
And a lot of freedom will come with that. That's my experience from releasing those patterns. And as you're describing that, I'm thinking there's probably a lot of people who would find that process intriguing, but maybe still wondering what their patterns are, or have they got patterns, or because I think when they're unconscious, they're so hidden that we believe that that's just the way things are and will always be.
Yes,
so
and I want to trust also that our bodies are going to sense when we're ready to begin to unpack those. So we don't have to go searching for them. We don't have to get all worried and wonder if do I have that pattern, or what are my patterns? That's not a call to arms here.
Okay, so we don't need to be thinking about this is a common pattern, because there's no common. Are there common patterns, or is it everyone just has their own individual little things? It's not like these are the. I think people have to analyze and box. I guess I see that. These are the people that do this, and they've come here from that, and this is this kind of thing. If you've had that kind of parent, you'll have this pattern. You'll develop these kind of relationships. You'll always track this kind of person.
Well, we can make a note to maybe explore more of the attachment patterns, because there are certain patterns that tend to be that we can generalize into, and yet I want to also honor each person has their own unique experience. That unless we check in with them, we never know what that is. So there's not one box fits everybody, ever.
I really like hearing that, because I always find that I never fit any of those boxes. Any of those personality tests, any of those patterns or things that are described in popular psychology, I just find I can't. And I also don't seem to fit in a box. People try and describe my personality. I don't easily.
Well, yeah. So even just using attachment theory for an example, and there's 4 different attachment styles. Well, it's also said that all of us have all of them.
Right.
So even with the energy medicine, different types of patterns that there are, and there's several different of those patterns. I think there's 5 of them. We all have all of those as well. And so when we can begin to see, well, we tend to have more of this. Well, when we want to start to balance ourselves, when we can grow awareness of what are all the different possibilities, then we're empowered to be more in choice. It's not about being judged to labels. Labels only help us to recognize the territory, but it's not the territory. It's just a map of the territory. So I want to treat each person as a brand new territory yet to be discovered, and really honor that.
I like that. So the label helps us understand, but it's not something that we need to be stuck inside of.
No. Yeah.
And looking at these patterns, I'm sort of captured by what we've said. It's they will arise as they need to. It's not something that we need to go digging up and cleaning out and looking for and sorting through.
Yeah.
They'll arise as they need.
Trust the process of life, and just practice by just noticing what you notice. And that's the first steps, is just noticing what you notice. And when you have concerns, reach out to a trusted other for support.
I think for me, that once I started on a journey of having regular contact with a community that I resonated with empathy and working with you, then those patterns were ready to arise, and then I worked through them. It wasn't that I noticed a whole bunch of patterns and went, oh, I've got to go and have these things sorted out. Yeah. So it's actually I think the first step, the beginning, is just developing that relationship of trust that you talk about.
It truly is. And then also being in community, when we're drawn to our tribe, we're drawn to our people. there's going to be a felt sense of getting gotten that's going to really support our healing journey. And so trust that, trust your gut, trust your heart to lead you more than your mind. Yeah.
Yes.
And so there are groups that are forming and ongoing. And so if people are interested in getting to begin to build community, I would invite them to join us and heal with others. And there's a free course on my website that I would invite them to begin to explore to see if it resonates. And there's 5 videos that they can go through, and at each step, as long as they're resonating, just continue to click to the next one. And at the end of that, if it's something that really resonates with you, then I would invite you to apply to become a part of a program. And you can find that course that's for free on healingyousanctuary.com for your next step.
And is there a special part of the website? So I've had a few people that I've been talking to about the free course, and everyone's time poor. So where exactly would they go to find that free course on your website? Is it obvious on the front page, or?
It is. Yes, it has its very own tab, kind of in the middle of, of the page. It says free course.
Yeah.
Then,
okay, so easy to find on healingyou.com.
No, healingyousanctuary.com.
healingyousanctuary.com.
Yeah.
I'm glad I clarified that.
And there's a lot of free resources on there as well. So I invite people to explore that and see what resonates for them.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for explaining the patterns of the past and what's possible, and all the resources that are available. And I'll look forward to speaking to you next week.
Yes, I look forward to it as well. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.